Welcome to the Hope Wave, another episode with Stacy and myself, Ralph, and I'm glad you're here with us today. Welcome, Stacy.
Hi, Ralph. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining.
This episode is called The Hope Habit. I love this when Stacy presented it. It's incredibly great topic. We want to talk about how hope, in a way that feels real, because a lot of people, hope doesn't show up as one big moment, or um, it shows up in real small ways, most ordinary moments that you never expect, and sometimes on days when you really have to look for it, which a lot of us go through as stroke survivors. This is especially true for stroke survivors and caregivers included. There are days when you feel strong, and there are days when you just getting through the day takes a lot out of you. So today we're talking about hope as something you can practice even when life feels uncertain. Stacy,
Yeah.
what is hope habit?
Ralph, when you hear the word hope, I think we picture something that's like bright and easy, and you're like staying positive no matter what. But you know what? That's not really how life works. So for me, when I suffered my carotid artery dissection and stroke, I felt really lost and frustrated on my road to recovery. At first, everyone's like, yeah, stay positive. But actually, everybody keep telling me to stay positive felt exhausting because my reality was very terrifying, right? So I felt as though real hope didn't come from pretending that I wasn't scared. It came when I accepted that I had this struggle, but I had to focus on charging forward. So, Ralph, have you, in your recovery and what you were going through, what was your experience with something like this?
I think honestly, for a lot of us, telling someone to just stay positive can feel a little disconnected from what they're actually going through. If you're recovering from a stroke or caring for someone for that matter, you know that there are hard moments, frustrating, and moments where nothing feels simple. I guess where the hope I had to adjust my hope was um, in physical therapy when they just put me on a bike and walked away. They're checking off a protocol instead of seeing what I really want to fix. But I determined in those moments, um, I don't know if I've ever shown you, but I have pictures on my phone of my bike results. And I got my hope back taking those pictures. I'd go faster. I'd go do more time, more laps in a certain amount of time. I'd record what level I was, those kind of things. And that helped me restore my hope because that meant to me I could improve. That
Exactly.
was
And
my habit.
Ralph, and when we say something like the hope habit, it's like we're not talking about pretending that everything is fine, because let's face it, it's not. I think it's about making the space for the idea that something good can still happen, even though what I would say is you're in the middle of a very difficult season of your life.
Interesting description of season. I like that. And that's a big difference because the hope doesn't erase pain. We go through pain, we go through, woe is me, what am I going to do now? All of that. It doesn't make the struggle disappear, but it can help us move forward when we'd otherwise feel stuck. And I think a lot of us go through that.
And I think something that I made the choice that I tried to keep playing in my mind was this is hard, but I'm not giving up. This is hard, but I'm not giving up. I just think being honest with myself made it all a little more bearable.
Yeah, I think there's a certain level of acceptance. I think there's a certain level of awareness of what's happening to us and what is helping us to improve. But I agree with you, not giving up on tomorrow. One thing I noticed is that hope started small for me because many of us here, this is as good as it's going to get. And that's when the hope was taken away from us. So I think, like I said, being on a bike, recording my results, it's not always some dramatic turning point. But if I look at all those pictures of all my results on a bike, added together, it's beautiful. I mean, it's just amazing what's happened. Um, and those are ordinary actions that reminded me that I still had strength. And it got me to the next level of awareness of what I can do and can't do and what I want to do. I always struggle with this too. What I want and what I need are two different things. So
Absolutely.
I had to go through that as well.
You know, for me, when we think about when it's like something small, which kind of like gives me like hope and happiness, for me, it's like playing with my cats or just kind of like watching the birds outside, just like kind of taking a step back. Those things may seem like small, but they're really, I don't know, in some way they feel quite powerful for me.
Yeah, I think, with what I do with Stroke Warrior Radio and you do with my Stroke of Hope is we talk about what we've done. We talk to other survivors. We talk to other people that have gone through some of the stuff that we're going through. And that helps. And I, I, I would be remiss not to mention for caregivers, those small actions matter too for them. It might be stepping outside for a few minutes to have quiet time, letting someone else help. Big one and I know many care partners that like this, asking for help. That's a huge step towards new hope. Um, and they sitting down, and this is true for both caregivers and survivors, um, sitting down long enough to rest without feeling guilty about it. I think a lot of caregivers and survivors go through that. And for all those care partners out there, think about it. I mean, take a break. You deserve it.
I think that's such an important point, Ralph, because small actions remind us that we're still active, participating in our own lives. Even if we can't do everything we used to, we can still do something. And I think that that's something we really need to focus on.
It really does. I mean, catch the wave. Warriors achieving victories every day. The radio's logo. I mean, sometimes the smallest step is the one that helps you feel like you can keep going. And those small steps keep adding up and keep adding up.
Ralph, and I think another important point for people to think about, and would love your opinion on this too, is something that I think affects our hope a lot is how we talk to ourselves. I know after my stroke, my inner voice was very harsh to myself. I blamed myself. I thought I had done something wrong. And I just, in fact, I remember waking up with that severe headache on the day of my dissection and pushing through. I even chose a workout over a warning sign because I was so stubborn on myself, even before it all happened to me. And early in my recovery, that same harsh voice kept telling me I should be stronger and that I was failing because I couldn't do what I used to do. And I had to learn to quiet my inner critic and realize that resting and listening to my body was not a weakness. It was what I needed to be stronger. And I think it took me a long time to realize that, and I wish I would have realized it sooner because I wonder if my recovery would have been a bit faster. And, as I've talked about on the show, my artery is still, my dissection never healed. And would it have healed had I been less hard on myself and took the time to relax?
And it's funny when you're tired or overwhelmed, it's easy to start saying things like, I'm falling behind, I should be handling this better. Why am I not further along? And that kind of self-talk kind of wears you down. I mean, if we really think about it, how many people out there have died from their stroke or dissections? How many people have died from their AVMs? We are the lucky ones. This has been the most difficult thing in my life, but it's become the most rewarding. So I think we have to stop the negative self-talk. And I don't want to get into the woo-hoo stuff. I'm not one of those people that, everything's positive. Have a great day, blah, blah. But that self-talk can be so important.
Yeah, and I think it's really learning to notice those thoughts and talk to yourself so you answer them more gently. And I'm not saying not to fake positivity, but you need to be kind to yourself. And I think a lot of times we're kind to others, but we're not kind to ourselves. And I think that is really important.
Yeah, I'm going to interject a little something in here that I don't often do, but one of the things that I found too is interjecting that spiritual component at some point in time. So instead of saying I'm falling, or you might say I'm doing the best I can today, or instead of saying I should be stronger, maybe I'm dealing with a lot and it makes sense that this feels hard. If you think about the spiritual aspect of it, there is some kind of higher power. Mine's my God and Jesus. So I mean, there's that can help some people. Some people it doesn't make a difference. But for me, that changes my thinking and my self-talk to something incredibly different than what we're talking about that takes you down.
Yeah, Ralph, and I think that kind of shift in your mindset can be incredibly meaningful. It can help you feel less alone inside your own head, right?
Exactly. Exactly. And sometimes that little bit of relief is what gives you enough strength to face the rest of the day. And
Yeah.
sometimes to face the next hour, maybe to face the next evening. There's for me, I had to fragment my days into positives and negatives or whatever. And, it eventually caught up with itself. And it took me, and I don't want to be negative to new survivors out there, but it took me over 4 or 5 years before I got that hope back. So I wish I would have known a lot of this earlier. That's why we do what we do, to tell
Exactly.
people it can be better. It doesn't make it better instantly, but it makes it easier. Um, and again, I said this just a minute ago, it can help you feel less alone inside your own head. I think we're going to finding one good thing now. I'm interested to talk to you about this one. I was a little lost on where you're going, but I
Yeah.
think one of the simplest ways to practice hope for me was looking for one good thing in a day. I got off my walker and walked 3 steps. There's a good thing. Tomorrow, maybe I'll do six. Tomorrow, maybe the next day, maybe I'll do five. It's not a perfect day, not a perfect moment, just one thing that felt good or kind or peaceful. For me, it's those little steps. Um, it was getting a bar stool and using it in the kitchen so I can do what I love to do, which is cook. Getting sitting down and writing my Italian recipes for my children. Those little things added up.
Yeah, and I think also, Ralph, it could be a message from someone who cares about you that really lifts your mood. I know for me, seeing a message or a comment from a survivor on my Stroke of Hope website or through my social media, it that really helps me because when someone tells me they felt less alone because they read about my journey or they listened to our show, it reframes my day and reminds me why we do this advocacy work. And like you said earlier in the program, Ralph, there were many gifts that came from this. And as I've always said, I've admired what you have done with Stroke Warrior Radio because I mean, I'm sure you get more of these messages than I do. And how does that make you feel?
It first off, I realized that other survivors helped me. And I
Yep.
realized that I don't want anybody to go through what I went through. So that's why I started Stroke Warrior Radio. And it it snowballed that people were giving me comments back about um, when I got off my walker and cane. They're giving me back comments, and all of a sudden it's like that restored my own hope because I heard that from them. Those comments mean a lot. And I appreciate them. I'm sure you do. And I hope everybody will do more. But I think one of the things I had to learn was that I have to seek those comments out as well. Some of them are going to come naturally. Some of them are going to have to be, I need to brag that I walked without my cane today and get that positive reinforcement. Sometimes that's the way it works for me anyway.
Yeah, I think so. And I think for other survivors, it could be something as simple as just finishing a task, having a good day at therapy, or feeling proud that you kept going. I think in life, we think everything has to be big and grandiose, especially with social media. Everything is big, grandiose, but there's so many wonderful little things in life that we just tend to overlook. And I think people who go through a stroke or any type of health crisis, I do think they find more appreciation in those little moments once they realize how important they are. It really does open your eyes.
Yeah, it does. I mean, again, I'm going to go back to awareness. You have to be aware of your um, surroundings, aware of um, what you actually have. And I'm going off track a little bit here from what we discussed, but it's finding the right therapist. It's finding out that neurophysical therapy is different than physical therapy. It's finding out that you can go and interview therapists or visit their facilities to see if it's the right place for you. There's all these steps that we need to um, work with. Um, and again, like you said, it's even easy to overlook. But if you start becoming captain of your own team, when you start noticing the good things, even the small ones, it can change the way you carry the day and change the way you carry your own recovery as well.
Well, Ralph, so I think we should challenge our listeners. I think we should challenge them to choose a hope habit and practice it for 7 days. What do you think about that?
Keep it simple, people. I think one of the best things you can do is keep it simple. The KISS factor. Keep it simple, stupid. Um, so I think it doesn't have to be big, complicated things like maybe you sat down and typed a paper on the computer that you couldn't do um, right after your stroke. Maybe it could be a little habit of being able to um, do laundry. I mean, it could be just writing down these little goals. Um, I've told you before, I have two journals. I have the angry journal and I have the gratitude journal. The gratitude journal is, here's one simple thing that happened to me this morning. Or asking someone for help when you need it, or asking another survivor, did you go through this? Is there somebody maybe I could talk to that you know? There's a lot of things to do. And I guess one of the things that I fought with is, through the cognitive especially, I didn't lose my intellect. My intellect's still there. So I started, and it took a few years, I started to have to think about what I guess the word I'm looking for is intentionality. So I kept it simple with the intentionality. Okay, I can only do one load of wash today. That was my goal for today. Maybe the next day, oh, maybe that load of laundry I did yesterday, I could sit down at the ironing board and get my shirts ironed. So that there's the little simple things in life. Don't complicate it with big old things. You don't need to go out and do a half a mile run or a half a marathon just to feel like you're recovering. Keep it simple.
Yeah, and I think for my 7 day challenge, when I do a lot of my talks, I talk about being the chief health officer of your life. And I'm guilty of not always practicing what I preach. So I think I'm going to, as part of that, schedule a few minutes of quiet rest each day. And this is quiet time where I'm not looking at my phone, I'm not checking off my list and worrying about what I haven't done. It's really my time to check in with how my body is actually feeling. So I'm going to try to do that over the next 7 days and hope that it turns into a habit, because I think it's one that would be very good for me. But just like you just told our listeners, it's very simple. Doesn't cost me any money, just costs me my mind to remember to do it. And, I'm very good about putting stickies on my computer that I'm going to do that once a day for myself.
I think one of the other things that I hear you saying too, for example, you brought up your list. One of the things I need to do for the next 7 days is reduce my list. I'll put down 15, 20 things, and by the end of the day, it's like, God darn it, I didn't do a damn thing today, did I? When I got six done, you know, that's keeping it simple and being realistic is the other thing, I think. What are those goals and are they going to be realistic? Um, it could be reaching out to others. It could be talking, self-talk. It could be reading something. It could be listening to one of our shows on YouTube or the social media shorts. I mean, they're all over the place. Go take a listen. Maybe we can share something that'll help somebody's recovery.
I think that sounds such a beautiful way to think about it, Ralph.
Well, I think what really makes it a habit is not that you feel hopeful every single second, but that you keep coming back to it again and again. And each time it's better. And whether you believe it or not, if you wrote it down today that I walked 3 steps, and a week from now you write it down that you did 12 steps, that's huge. Look back on the fact that you only could do three. Now I'm doing 12. Those are the victories that you and I are talking about.
Yeah,
That's what restores our personal hope.
absolutely, Ralph. And I think what I'd like to leave listeners with is hope doesn't have to be loud to be real. It just has to be something that you're willing to return to. And I really hope everyone out there listening will challenge themselves for 7 days, and it will make a difference for you.
I like that. I like that. I like the challenge of 7 days. Let's quantify it. Exactly. I love that. Well, thank you. I do appreciate your time as always, Stacy. Anything else you want to add for today?
No, we'd certainly love to hear if anyone takes the challenge and wants to give any feedback. You can reach out to Ralph through Stroke Warrior Radio, all of his social media channels. You can reach out to me on Instagram at mystrokeofhope.com. Would just love to hear who takes the challenge and how it works out.
I'd love that too. And don't forget strokewarriorradio@gmail.com. Thank you very much. For our listeners, recovery isn't just defined by a discharge date. It's a lifelong journey of learning, adapting, healing, and discovering strengths many of us never knew we possessed. To our listeners, we encourage you to take one idea, in particular the 7 day challenge, from today's conversation and begin putting it into practice this week. Small, consistent actions create remarkable changes over time. To learn more about my stroke of hope and Stacy, uh, as she said, mystrokeofhope.com, and on social media through Instagram is my stroke of hope also, isn't it?
Yeah, correct,
Okay.
Ralph.
And then mine are all Stroke Warrior Radio, YouTube, Instagram, all of those. Thank you for joining us on Warrior Radio and the Hope Wave Show with Stacy Quinn. Remember, your story matters. Your recovery is worth fighting for, and you are never alone on this journey. Catch the wave. That's warriors achieving victories every day. Thank you.